The COVID-19 pandemic and the resultant lockdown has pushed industries against the wall. While the restrictions on business operations have seen revenue streams across several sectors drying up, it has also by and large severely dented the demand story in India. Over 60% of India's top 181 corporate leaders we spoke to as part of the CII-CNBC TV18 CEO Centimeter feel that demand will revive only by October. Only about 10% anticipate a demand revival in June. That's not all. 44% feel that cash flows have been the biggest pain point in their business. 33% of the CEOs said that they were operating their businesses at a 10 to 15% capacity. Hello and welcome to this special broadcast of the COVID-19 CEO Centimeter. I'm Shireen Bhan. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll go through the findings of the CII-CNBC TV18 CEO poll to understand how the COVID pandemic has altered the business centimeter in corporate India. That's not all. We'll also take a look at how CEOs are checking in on the personal centimeter. Joining us today, CII President Vikram Kirloskar. Also with us, Vinayak Chatterjee, the Chairman of CII's Infrastructure Council and the Chairman of Feedback Infra. Suman Sinha, the Chairman of the CII Renewable Energy Council and the Chairman and Managing Director of Renew Power. And Sanjay Kapoor, the Co-Chairman of CII Smart Manufacturing Council and the Chairman of Sona Comstar. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Vikram Kirloskar, let me start by asking you, what is the indication that you're getting in terms of business confidence? Lockdown 4 is almost coming to an end. We are now prepared for lockdown 5, except we don't know what shape or form it's going to take. This has emerged as one of the big pain points after cash flow in the CEO centimeter. What's the feedback from the ground?
Well, I think the feedback from the ground from my company is that by end of May, probably half of the stocks that we have with dealers and in the factory will get cleared. We've just started preparations for production. We've started some production. I expect in June we'll be at about 40 to 50% level, 40% level of output, normal output. And it will probably continue at that range probably till September, October. I hope for a pickup then. But there are people coming into not coming into dealerships. They're coming to dealerships for definitely for repair and service. Few people coming with orders, but some orders coming in on the internet. People are definitely calling. We haven't had cancellations of backlog, but people are saying, hold on a little bit. Hold on some time and then we'll look at it.
But what's interesting is that you're suggesting, Vikram Kirloskar, that you don't expect to be up at full production capacity for another few months.
I really don't expect till next year. Frankly.
Till next year?
Yeah. I don't see.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
Until next year, until actually a vaccine is out. Very frankly, we'll start slowly inching up as people get confidence, people get safer, feel safer. This kind of buying really depends on sentiment. I think it depends on how safe you feel, and what is the whole economy. Am I guaranteed a salary next year? I think it goes a little bit on that. I think when people get confidence that yes, 2-3 months we have kept you on the job, but does the company still have money to pay you for the next few months? All that I think is an issue. So it's really a confidence building issue.
Okay.
I don't think it's a liquidity issue. There's lots of money in the market with the banks. I think for the right people, they will give retail finance. I think all that is there. But I think it's personal, individual confidence.
Okay, so the centimeter is not suggesting a strong move if you listen into what Vikram Kirloskar is saying, and even what the poll is suggesting, 60% believe that a demand recovery is likely only closer to October. Vinayak Chatterjee, what are you picking up? What's the story as far as infrastructure is concerned? And to the point being made there by Vikram Kirloskar, that look, at the end of the day, if you're seeing job losses around you, you might not have lost your job just yet, but it's around in the news. If you're seeing salary reductions, if there is insecurity about your finances, then are you really going to go out there and make big ticket purchases or just stick with the essentials?
See, Vikram is very right. But the real issue going forward is, how do you get that sentiment back? How do you get demand back? I think the perception now after the FM's announcement of the details of the package is that it has to some extent addressed the issue of liquidity with specific reference to the MSME segment. I think the big expectation now, and gradually you can see the crescendo building up from amongst editorial writers, policymakers, industry chambers, that we require massive public works programs unleashed now to actually get a big bang demand stimulus back. And that's where infrastructure connects in, because it is massive public works that has the biggest multiplier effect on jobs, steel, cement, construction equipment, and more importantly, jobs in Bharat, jobs in the hinterland, jobs at the doorstep of villages, which is actually going to get this whole demand cycle back. And that, to my mind, is what is required now.
But are you...
Otherwise, it will be a very long, drawn-out process.
But are you seeing any difference, Vinayak, on the ground today? Are you seeing any difference? You know, as we've emerged from lockdown 1 to lockdown 4, several relaxations have been brought in, especially as far as construction, etc. is concerned. Are you seeing any change on the ground? Is there any revival of activity so far?
Yeah, this question is addressed to me, right?
Yes.
Okay. No, yes, of course. The news trickling in is that most projects that were halted are actually seeing the companies related to those projects making very, very strenuous efforts to get those sites mobilized and getting them up and running. Largely, I have anecdotal data from the roads and highways sector and railways to see that there is high pressure, and between the client organizations and the construction companies, they're burning the midnight oil to get all the e-passes, the necessary permissions from the local authorities, getting the supplies in, getting the labor in. It's a tough challenge. And I think the biggest challenge there is getting the migrant labor or the construction labor back in terms of full strength. And that is the real issue now, that it's an uphill task in terms of getting the full complement that was there before the COVID.
Yes, that is a problem, and that is what is impacting capacity utilization rates at this point in time as well. Let me bring in Sumant Sinha. Sumant, what's your own expectation in terms of demand revival? There have been some measures announced specifically for the power sector as well by the finance minister in that overarching package. But and we have seen an uptick as far as power consumption is concerned. What's your own sense?
No, I think you're absolutely right, Shireen, that power consumption has gone up. So that's certainly heartening news. But it could have gone up it could be just because of the heat and air conditioning demand and so on. I think it's partly also because some factories are beginning to restart. But as Vikram said, those restarts are still at a very slow pace. And I think it's going to take a long while for factories to really get back up to full pace, right? And so therefore, power demand will also take some time to get back to where it was earlier in terms of, the normal. To your larger question of how long do I think is going to take for things to settle down, I tend to agree with Vikram that until you have a vaccination, people are not really going to feel that safe in going, being out and about. So yes, you will have activity starting, you will have people moving around, but it will always be very half-hearted with a sense of trepidation behind it, with a sense of apprehension about how safe really am I. Of course, some of the younger folks can be out and about more easily. Maybe some of the older guys like us will take a little bit longer to get out. But I think all of that, therefore, will constrain demand. And, given that GDP growth is a very finely balanced thing that, you have to grow year on year, I think we're going to be stretched this year even just to keep up with last year's GDP. And I think all forecasts are now saying we're looking at a 5 to 10%, perhaps even a GDP drop this year. So I think it's not looking very good. It's going to take some time. It's going to take at least, I would say, 3 to 6 months at the very least for us to get back to not even close to normal. I think just to get back to some sort of an even keel where things are humming a little bit more than right now, where everything is essentially shut. And to your other question to Vinayak about infrastructure, growth and projects reviving, in our case also, while our existing projects are running because power is an essential service and therefore we're able to keep our sites running, for getting existing, construction of new projects often running, we've had a real difficult time because a lot of our labor has gone away, and they've just gone home right now. So I don't know how long it'll take for them to come back, and even when they'll feel safe to come back. And then we'll have to have the whole reverse migration happening before you really get the same number of people you had at site that you had earlier. And so I think all of that will take 3 to 4 months at the very least as well. So I think we'll have to just make allowance for all of these things, and until people get their jobs back and they feel some comfortable and secure, you will just not have the same kind of spending that we were used to last year.
That's right. Sanjay, let me ask you, and I don't know whether you put yourself in the bracket of Sumant Sinha. He called himself an old man on national TV, but just on the recovery path, and there's all kinds of estimations coming in on when we could perhaps see a recovery. The global chairman of EY on my program said that the world is likely to see a sawtooth recovery. The global CEO of McKinsey on my program said that it's likely to resemble a swoosh. What's your own estimation on demand recovery, and specifically with the lockdown restrictions, have you been able to maneuver around the complexity of inter-border movement, migrant labor, e-passes, etc.? How hard is it to just get business up and running?
So, Shireen, thanks. My answers are not very different from the others. I do believe that domestic recovery is going to take a little longer than we think it is. However, it's too early to say at this point in time. And again, as the others said, it's a mindset issue. Until we have an antiviral or a vaccine, it's a huge mindset issue. Are we going to go out there, buy vehicles or not? Of course, we're in the automotive space, and therefore I refer to that space. However, our export business has picked up. Farm equipment has picked up. So I'm going to go with the sawtooth recovery from a global perspective. From India's domestic market, I think we're still a while away. We've had a bad 15 months coming into this crisis as far as the automotive industry is concerned, especially with commercial vehicles, with regulation changes in commercial vehicles, with BS4 to BS6, etc. So it's been difficult, and I don't see it easing up anytime soon. There have been some buys in terms of some volume of sales, very low volumes of sales compared to last year. I think we've seen a 20% degrowth last year. I think we can expect a 50% degrowth this year as far as automotive is concerned.
Wow, 50% degrowth is what you're expecting. But, Vikram, let me come back to you in terms of this idea of pent-up demand. And as we move towards lockdown 5, the hope is that we will see more easing of restrictions. So like we've opened up aviation, perhaps the next logical step would be to open up hospitality, restaurants, and so on and so forth. Now, your state of Karnataka has just a few minutes ago banned all travel into the state from 5 states. States like Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, etc. No road, rail or flight travel has been allowed by Karnataka for a period of 8 to 9 days before a review is going to be taken. So even though we've seen aviation take off, would you, for instance, take a flight anytime soon? Because the poll seems to suggest that most CEOs are wary of that.
I'm not leaving my house for a long time. For various reasons, but I'm not able to leave my house for a long time. But if I look at the situation here in Bangalore and maybe in Karnataka, numbers have been quite under control. There's a hospital next to me which has a COVID facility, and they said right from day one they haven't received a single patient. It's empty, and I believe only 4-5% of the beds in Bangalore have been used. So they've kept things under tight control. Yes. I think Mr. Yedurappa has done a brilliant job, especially he's managed to get all the opposition together, and I'm not just praising him for nothing. I think he's really done a brilliant job in keeping things calm and getting us confidence out here. And I think that's why he's looking at the cases in the last few weeks and then doing this. But at the same time, I'm an optimist. I've always been an optimist. I try to plan for the pessimistic view. But I always look out optimistically. And I look around me, I see some construction work started, people trying to finish the buildings. I see a little more traffic every day. I see the shops opening a little more. The golf courses in Bangalore have opened up to various conditions. People are out playing. So if things start normalizing, I think it'll grow a little geometrically. Yeah. It's not going to be a linear growth. I do believe there'll be a geometric growth, and therefore it's very hard to say when it'll really start going up fast. But there is a pent-up demand. We certainly see that there are people who are interested in buying vehicles. They're just scared right now, about the financial future. But they say, yes, we need a change.
Yes.
That is the situation.
and companies are going to have to maneuver that. I would imagine that all the schemes that will be worked out around EMIs and so on and so forth will have to factor in this financial insecurity, which is a key concern that consumers are dealing with. But Vinayak Chatterjee, if you had the opportunity and now you are allowed to, would you be taking a flight anytime soon? Our poll suggests that 35% will wait for a month, 28% believe that they'll wait for 3 months, 17% say not this year if possible.
I'm willing to take a flight tomorrow morning if there is a need. I mean, with this full protective gear and all the steps that the airlines and the airports have taken that I've been reading about every day in the morning papers, I actually feel pretty safe in terms of the whole paraphernalia of measures that have been put into, getting passengers to fly. So if there is a meeting where I have to go, I'm happy to hop onto a flight tomorrow. No issue.
But overall, do you believe that businesses will now restructure the way that we've been engaging with clients, etc.? Do you believe that, the era of flying to client meetings, etc., is at least a thing of the past for the next 6 months to a year?
No. I think it's not 6 months or a year. It's a change in the complete lifestyle of businesses. People are going to think 10 times before they book a flight ticket or organize a physical meeting. So the old order of things is not going to come back. People are going to be very, very cautious about taking the decision to fly, and will fly only when it is absolutely necessary. So the old order has changed, and I think this will have significant impact on the hotel and the aviation industry.
Yes, a significant impact. Suman Sinha, do you believe that some of these changes are going to be irreversible, or do you believe that we're making too much to extrapolate what we're seeing today as being irreversible changes?
Yes, Shireen, look, as a less younger person, let me answer that question. No, I agree with you that, sometimes when you're in the midst of the deepest night is when you think and you extrapolate from that point on, and you think that everything is going to remain dark forever. So I think that we are in the midst of a crisis, and the mental attitude tends to be to extrapolate from there. But I think that there are some issues. First of all, when you asked Vinayak the question, he said, if there is a need, I'll get onto a plane tomorrow. I think people are going to question the need a lot more seriously now than they used to question it earlier. And the bar for getting on a plane now, people are just going to set it a lot higher. And I think that will carry on for a reasonably long period of time. And I'll tell you, it's not going to be so much an apprehension once things have resolved and we have a vaccination and so on, of fear of COVID and things like that to prevent people from flying. But it's just that now we've all got used to doing a lot more work on Zoom or Skype or in virtual settings, even long, group meetings. We've got used to doing conferences and so on. So now people are going to say, if I can actually be as effective in this way, then why do I have to spend a day traveling somewhere and coming back and getting exhausted in the process and taking all the aggravation and the stress? So I think it's going to be more that fact that we've all now got used to a different way of working by virtue of being forced into this, that I think that is going to change mindsets and work behaviors in the future. And so, yes, there is therefore going to be a longer term impact of this, and it will certainly impact airlines and it will certainly impact hotels. But, I think once this thing is behind us, I can see people getting back to going for holidays and, going for leisure travel and so on. I don't see that, and, ultimately people have short memories. I think a year later, once this is behind us, then we'll just look back and say, oh, what a strange time that was. And we'll be back to doing things that we normally used to do earlier.
Yeah, Sanjay, let me ask you this, because the restaurant business, the hotel operators, the mall operators are all asking for relaxations. They're all saying, let us open up. But assuming that the government were to provide them with those relaxations as we go into lockdown 5, do you believe that there will be takers? Because if I look at the poll, it doesn't seem to look very good for them. Whether it's eating out or being able to go to the movie theater or taking holidays, the poll seems to suggest that at least for 2020, it's going to be a bit of a washout.
I'm going to go back to my initial response. It's a mindset issue. I don't think, unfortunately, we know enough about the disease. One day you read someone died overnight, the next day you read someone survived it. So I don't think we know enough. I also, like the others have said, I think we've set into this mode where we've become so comfortable with doing things from home. Zoom calls or webinars or Skype calls like this have made it so easy. I mean, you can look at a factory through a virtual tour. People are doing audits of factories through virtual tours, etc. So I think it's become so much easier. The ease of doing business, sitting at home without the risk factor has increased. And therefore, I think it's going to create a new sort of environment, a new way of working, and some things are going to change permanently. Unfortunately, I don't see, myself going out to take that risk because I don't know enough about it. If it's, forced upon me, like Vinayak said, if we have to do it, we'll do it. However, given an option, I think, we've changed the way we live and work.
Change the way we live and work. What about change the way that we deal with philanthropy? And that's an important aspect to talk about as well. Vikram Kirloskar, through this period, we've seen companies, individuals, not just hand over checks to the PM CARES Fund and other NGOs and organizations as well. But do you believe that the manner in which COVID has struck us, that we are going to see companies assess, reevaluate their CSR plans as well?
Well, I think there will be some reassessment, because now I think it's priority of the companies. Even say, like in the auto business, Sanjay said, we may be lucky with a 50% business this year compared to last year, 50-60%, which means if I need to have at least a cash break-even at a 50-60% level. And if I want to retain all my employees, it means I have to cut every other expense that I possibly can. It's travel, X, Y, Z, whatever it is. And now you can look at looking after society by giving money. That, of course, is there, and that we'll continue doing. Whatever projects we're doing, the villages, the schools and all that. But it's also equally important and a responsibility to hold on to the employees and pay them.
Yes.
And just trying to do that itself is a challenge, and it's going to be a challenge for many people. And
absolutely. What are you hearing, Vikram Kirloskar, from members of CII? There has been this government directive which has gone to court, and now there is another directive from the government which holds that previous directive of full payment of salaries during the lockdown period null and void. But prospectively, what's your own sense about reduction in wages and job losses? We're starting to see that happen. Do you anticipate much more?
See, for a company which has some cash reserve and they require the skill, they'll try their best to hold on. Okay, but if someone runs out of cash, what can he do? If it's a small company or a large company, whatever, and completely runs out of cash, he has no source to finance and no source of business. What will he do? How will he keep the person employed? I think that's a big question mark. So it's important right now to get the economy rolling as fast as possible across the whole country, not just the green areas. I think what they've done on trying to reduce the red zones and make it into very strict containment zones has been a good start. But it's important that across the country we start in a safe manner, get the economy rolling. Unless the cash rolls through, it's hard to hold on to employees as well. And we need, even if you say, I'll reduce the salaries, I'll reduce this, whatever, I'd rather do that than try to say, please go. Because I need the skill. We've developed these people over years. We've developed the skills over years. And losing them is not good for the future either. This is going to last for maybe 12 months. Okay, max, I hope. And after that, we'll be hopefully back to normal. And then we need all these people back. So I think we have to go, we'll have to prioritize problems on our own employees first before anything else.
I completely agree with you. I think the priority has to be employees before anything else. And I think that in itself is a big responsibility for corporate India. Vinayak Chatterjee, your own expectation, do you believe that the measures announced so far, you said that liquidity is ample now, but, the hope is that at least there will be a one-time restructuring scheme that will be announced by the Reserve Bank. What's the key ask, the top ask now?
Look, as I mentioned earlier in the program, the key ask now, and as I said, you can hear the crescendo rise, is that we have seen a liquidity infusion which is broadly targeted at survival and the supply side, which basically means in simple terms that if demand picks up, then your firm should be in a position, particularly in the MSME segment, to be able to cater to the demand. But the big question, the elephant in the room is, as we have been discussing, is there demand? And therefore, the answer is very clearly a huge apprehension that demand has evaporated across the system. How do you get demand back? Classical economics, whether it is a New Deal after the Great Depression in 1929 or the Marshall Plan after the World War II in Europe or many other recent examples, show that the biggest bang for the buck in terms of getting a nation to revive its entire demand cycle is very large public works programs. And that has been my entreaty and our request from many others, including me, to the policymakers that we now need to see some very concerted steps on unleashing massive public works programs to get the demand back at an economic level, cross-sectoral.
Yes, get demand going is the ask and the hope of industry. We are starting to see, at least for some sectors, we did a call with Dabur this morning after seeing a 14% drop. They're talking about starting to see signs of recovery, but that is the FMCG sector. We're also seeing down trading happening within the FMCG sector. Fans are being sold because the temperature is now at almost 50 degrees in parts of India. So I think demand and the recovery is going to be patchy and inconsistent across different sectors. But the big worry at this point in time is financial security, and that perhaps will hold back demand. Vikram Kirloskar, Vinayak Chatterjee, Sumant Sinha, Sanjay Kapoor, always a pleasure. Many thanks for joining us here on the CNBC TV 18 CII CEO Centimeter. We wish you all the very best of luck and thanks very much for your time this evening. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this special broadcast. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18. The news will continue.